Alrighty, welcome to episode 2 of Beyond Sports Podcast. This is going to happen to be our Christmas edition of the episode. And joining us for the first time, and our very first guest, an avid Texas Longhorns fan, Richard Rodriguez. And so,
Hello.
and so we had a couple of questions for him. And starting off is, why do you love college football, Richard?
Well, the reason I love college football is because the first time I was taken to a football game was when I was 8 years old. My dad took me to a Texas game. It was Texas versus Notre Dame. And Tyrone Swoops got the winning touchdown. And that was just a very exciting moment. And it's like really got me engaged into college football.
Nice. Um, and so, of course, you said your dad took you to a Texas football game. And so, what made you fall in love with Texas? Was it because of the fact that your dad was a alma mater of the team? And how do you feel about Texas now making it to the playoffs in the first time in 20 years or
Well,
less?
yeah, it's because my father graduated from UT, so that's why I'm a Texas Longhorn fan. And how do I feel about them making the playoffs? Well, of course, I'm very excited about them making the playoffs. But I do have a little concern about this Washington game coming up because it might cause us a little bit of difficulty.
Um,
So
yeah,
for
yeah,
Texas,
Kim.
what do you think? Is it a good matchup? Do you like Washington, or would you rather Texas play, say, a Michigan or a Bama in this first round of the semifinal?
Well, I'd rather us play a Michigan first. But here's our weakness against Washington, and that is our pass defense. We have one of the worst pass defenses in college right now. And so that's our weakness. As long as we can keep them on the ground running it, then we're all good. We can control the game. So that's how I feel about it.
All right, so what would you say are Texas's key to victory? Just controlling the ball, controlling the run, like you said, or do you think there's something else? Do you think there's something that almost Washington needs to succumb like to pressure of T'Vondre Sweat or stuff like that?
Yet De'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy need to really step up their game against Washington on January 1st because that would be a very big key to if we're going to win or not.
Alrighty, well, we're glad to have you on the show for this episode. Starting it off, we'll start with some bowl reactions. So, Kieran, if you want to kick it off with UTSA over Marshall and what happened during that game.
Yeah, so UTSA really kind of just steamrolled Marshall. Although in a little foreshadowing, it was not the worst steamrolling that we'll see in bowls this week. They were able to get it done. Were in control the whole time. They never looked panicked or behind, really, um, or even nervous. I think that's really key. They were a very poised team, and Trey Moore played well and is now headed to Texas. So I think that's a huge positive to a great season for UTSA, and I think they'll continue to do well. But there's not a whole lot to break down there. UTSA was able to kind of just take care of. And the next game is perhaps the worst pasting we've seen in a bowl so far this year. South Florida beat Syracuse 45-0, um, which was honestly incredible to watch, and I think Syracuse struggled massively due to having quarterbacks injured and in the portal, and with Kyle McCord not being able to play, obviously, even though he's now transferred there, and all of that. I think it had a huge impact on that Syracuse team. I think bigger than me or Kirtan predicted, but I think it was a huge defeat. And it was a big win for South Florida, being able to roll over a program like Syracuse like
Yeah,
that.
I mean, Byron Brown had a day. I mean, 300 yards throwing and 3 touchdowns. And to think that their starting quarterback, USF's starting quarterback, is 19 years old, true freshman. I mean, the kid's gonna be special. He took care of Syracuse in considerable fashion. And I mean, Syracuse had both their quarterbacks have a horrific day. I mean, not to mention that they had two interceptions. Neither quarterback threw for more than 100 yards total. And then, if you thought the passing was bad, the damn running back or the running room was even worse. The running room only had 22 yards of rushing the entire game. USF dominated, and considerably, Sean Atkins of USF had 93 yards and two touchdowns, and I believe it was only on six receptions, seven receptions. So USF controlled business, and really, it scares Syracuse because how is Syracuse going to perform now when they got steamrolled by USF? So, Richard, what were your thoughts on that game?
On that game, I thought that from the beginning to the end, it was never really close because Syracuse was making so many minor mistakes. It just kept adding up and adding up, just like the mistake where they fumbled the 45-yard field goal and then South Florida returned that for a touchdown. That just shows like how out of it Syracuse was. So it never really was a close game.
Yeah,
I
I
mean, it was
agree.
ugly, and you have to think if they clean up mistakes, then that's a much better game for them. Even if they lose, it certainly doesn't look so bad, and I think that's a big part of what um, led to that monumental upset. Just kind of the snowballing of mistakes that kind of really doomed them. And next we move to the Gasparilla Bowl, where Georgia Tech was able to take care of USF on the back of 286 rushing yards. But I actually think the running back on the other side for USF, RJ Harvey, number 7, was the more impressive back. I mean, there was a lot of times where you're watching and he escapes from something that you just, there's no way. You're thinking, oh, it's a tackle for loss, and he manages to get 3 or 4, or he manages to break free out of a sure tackle. I think he's a really good running back. I think he's been underrated. I don't think many people have heard a whole lot about him, but he's a big name, and he had a big performance in this game, even if his team came up short in the end. And I think he was, even undercredited in the post game, obviously because his team did come up short. But I think he was huge in this game, and that's kind of the main takeaway by a very, very good Georgia Tech run attack. But what do you think, Kirtan?
I mean, I was surprised. Of course, I picked UCF to win. I think I said they would win by a touchdown, something like that. But the how do I word this the best? The changes made during that second quarter were outstanding by Georgia Tech. I mean, they were down 17-0 at the end of the first quarter, and then they came back and scored, I believe it was 17 points in the second quarter. And then from there, it seemed like they just clicked. And like you said, Jamal Haynes had 120 yards rushing, and that was capped off by Haynes King, who had 89 yards and a touchdown. And I mean, the passing game wasn't as strong. It wasn't your best performance. I believe there was a touchdown and an interception for the quarterback of Georgia Tech. I forgot his name right now. But I believe he threw one interception, one touchdown. But that rushing game was just dominating. I mean, like you said, over 200 yards rushing. I believe it was two touchdowns on the ground. It was just a well-rounded Georgia Tech rushing game. And I know you have some ideas on that, right, Richard?
Yeah, I agree with exactly what you were saying, how they started off 17-0, looked like UCF was about to have a clean win, clean victory, and then Georgia Tech, something just snapped in them in the second quarter. They just picked it up right where they left off from the second quarter to the third quarter, and they really separated themselves from the third to the fourth quarter. And nothing really. That's all I have to say. So, how do
All
you feel
right, so
about?
next we're going to move
What were you saying, Richard?
to the Las.
Yeah, we'll go with Kieran. We'll go with Kieran.
Here.
All right. Um, so in the Armed Forces Las Vegas Bowl, even though the old adage that the more time you get to prepare for that triple option offense, the easier it is to stop it, Air Force was able to just really kind of brutalize and be the more physical team to beat James Madison 31-21. And I believe this is Air Force's third straight bowl win, which is big for them. And it finishes off a season that started very, very high and then kind of trailed off towards the end of the season, but they're going to be able to end it on a high. And I think it was a very good win, just able to kind of just run over James Madison and prevent them from being able to score with their offense, their high-flying offense.
Yeah, and I mean, Kieran, last week you predicted this perfectly. I mean, I really believe James Madison would cap off an outstanding year, and I thought, like you said, the more time you have to prepare for that deadly triple option, the easier it would be to stop. But I mean, that was proven wrong. Air Force had an amazing game. Zachary Larrier, I believe is his name, had 45 yards and a touchdown. So, again, another game that was capped off by rushing. And I mean, Emmanuel Mitchell, an outstanding rushing game again with 35 carries, mind you. So basically, they ran it every single time they could. And he had 203 yards on the ground plus two touchdowns. I mean, it capped off a great performance. And I was proven wrong here. I believe James Madison after having an 11-1 season and finishing as a 24th ranked team, I believe that they were going to come into this game with a vendetta to almost win at all costs, just to prove that this season meant something to like silence the doubters. But Air Force's triple option was overwhelming, and that rush game again on this bowl game was deadly.
So, and perhaps the most surprising, or maybe not surprising, but kind of, I guess, dreamlike finish to a season, Northwestern was able to put away Utah in the Las Vegas Bowl, which was, I mean, it was a slog. It was 0-0 for a long time, and then it was Northwestern was up by 7 for it felt like forever, and then Utah was able to respond, and then it looked like Utah was going to be able to take it the distance and at least tie it. But I mean, Northwestern turnovers turned out to be the difference. Bryson Barnes throwing 2 picks and losing a fumble, which was only their second lost fumble of the year, which is incredible. But that was really the difference in this very low-scoring game to me, and I think it was a hugely disappointing win for Utah. Um, I picked them, and I would do so again because I think it was really turnovers that were the difference and created that points margin in this one. Um, but Northwestern, I mean, it's an incredible story, right? Going from winning one game, and most people said they weren't going to win a game, and they finished 8-5. Who was a former assistant there, and I think that's big for him. I think it's a huge, very much creating the up trajectory for Northwestern, and it's a crushing loss for Kyle Whittingham in Utah, and it's you wonder if playing a quarterback in the portal might have affected it or something like that. But to me, it's just they'll have Cam Rising back next year, and they'll be able to reload and hopefully have a better season because they certainly, I think, disappointed a lot of their fans this year without Cam Rising, without some of those key pieces, and I think it's not a great season
Yeah,
from Utah.
yeah, I
But
absolutely
I
agree.
think the Northwestern story.
Yeah, the Northwestern story was amazing.
Uh,
Like you were saying, this is just such a disappointment. Losing 7-14 as like, and I'm not even a Utes fan, but I mean, just from the start of the season, it just really seemed down compared to last season. Last season, they beat SC, and I believe it was the Pac-12 championship, I want to say.
yes.
And just the season starting off with Cam Rising getting injured, it almost seemed like it was riddled from the start to be a bad year. Bryson Barnes did honestly, it was a horrific performance from the QB. He only threw 13 passes. He threw 8 for 13, and I believe it was somewhere in the 50s were his yards. But all I remember is that he capped off with 2 interceptions, and this game was a resounding low score. I mean, they relied on Ben Bryant, their quarterback. Talking about the Utes. I mean, they relied on really the run game with Jaquinton Jackson, but he only got 8 carries for 55 yards. It was just a very poor performance. And then on Northwestern, it's a great story. Predicted to be one of the bottom teams, come back. Ben Bryant, this game shows dominance. 22 for 34 passing, and he has, I believe, 200 some odd yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this was just really well executed for Northwestern. I would have loved to see more from both teams, but I think it was a great way to end off this beautiful story around the Wildcats and just such a disappointment for the Utes fans. Richard, I don't know if you have any ideas on this game. I know you were pretty bummed out whenever you texted me telling that Cam Rising was going to be Or you said at the beginning of the season, I remember you texted me saying, Cam Rising's gone. What does this mean for Utah? So you care to help analyze this game?
Well, this game, it was just kind of just a low mess. I mean, it was a total of 211 yards for Utah and 290 yards for Northwestern. And just a key difference here was 2 turnovers by Utah. And without those turnovers, who knows? Utah might have won. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, and I think if you really want to get technical, I think that Northwestern, so they like to sit in a Tampa 2 coverage. So it's a type of cover 2, and that specific coverage started in Tampa Bay, but is kind of spread around the sport, and that was huge for them. There were a lot of throws that Bryson Bars made, especially the 2 picked off, where it's a crossing route and the safety is able to sit underneath and come across and pick it off from the other side just because he doesn't see him there, he doesn't expect him to be there. And the way that Northwestern secondary played was really incredible. To be able to get those picks and be able to kind of, almost hide out in the middle of the field from the quarterback so he wasn't able to read him and find him and not throw that ball, but he lets it loose, he lets it fly. It's a decent ball in terms of accuracy, but it's going to get picked off because those safeties are able to drift and float. And I think it was an excellent performance from Northwestern secondary. And Utah was missing their 2 starting safeties in the portal, so I think that had a big bearing on the game as well, being able to shut down that pass attack. So those are some reactions from some of the bowls over this past week. Next up, we have what I think is perhaps the most interesting segment, at least of this episode, on fixing the transfer portal. So throughout this week, and I think these bowl games that we've talked about, these big ugly scores that aren't great competition and aren't great for the sport, really aren't drawing viewership. To me, that the fact that a lot of schools aren't going to have their best players playing and haven't had their best players playing, I think this says something about the calendar. And the fact that Texas won't have Malik Murphy, for example, and USC is not going to have Caleb Williams and all of these guys. To me, a lot of the guys that are transferring, Oklahoma won't have Dylan Gabriel, and this is a lot of quarterbacks. But to me, the transfer portal and the calendar is kind of in the wrong spot. And I don't know exactly where I would put it, but I mean, I think it has to go somewhere. I'm not sure where. I just don't think right now and in this crazy month of December really works because to me it's taking a lot of good players away from their teams for bowl games, and it results in not the bowl season that we all remember and enjoyed as younger. I don't know what your thoughts are on this, Kirtan and Richard, but I think it's a problem in the sport. And obviously, we're not going to fix it. None of us is the commissioner of the SEC or any major conference, obviously. But just to get some of your thoughts on this and exactly what you think about it.
Yeah, I'll start out with this. The calendar is messed up, but really, what can you do about it? I mean, again, Texas's biggest loss right now is Malik Murphy going to Duke, and not for the fact that he'll be the replacement for Quinn Ewers because that's obviously going to be Arch Manning sooner or later, but it's the fact that, like, going back to the question I asked Kieran last week, was are you prepared for Quinn Ewers to go down against Washington, and are you able to rely on Arch Manning, who has played less than, I believe it was like 5 minutes, or he played the fourth quarter in Texas Tech and played some of the dying minutes against Oklahoma State? Are you prepared for him to go in? And then same thing, like you said, Dylan Gabriel won't play because he's heading over to Oregon. And so is it the calendar's fault? And this is what I just thought of, like, would you want, as a Texas fan, Richard, I'll ask you this question, would you want Malik Murphy to play for you if he, like, let's say take case scenario, Malik Murphy was the starting quarterback.
Okay.
He was your starting quarterback for Texas Longhorns, and he said, you know what, this isn't a good fit for me. I'm going to head over to Notre Dame. Would you still want him to play in that bowl game, or would you feel almost like he's against you now? He left you for another team. Would you not want him on your team anymore?
Well, that's really tricky. So I would say that I'd still want him on our team for the bowl games because of all that experience he has. Because once you lose all that experience and give it to a new QB who barely has any minutes, the outcomes could be obviously very different because QB is the captain of the offense. He leads the offense. He controls the offense. And so if you give it to somebody with very little experience, they're going to have trouble just going against defenses, good defenses, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, then I had some questions about the transfer portal as well, right? So my question for both of y'all, either one of y'all can answer this, is should a player be limited in the amount of times he's able to transfer from a school? Like take Dylan Gabriel, this is his, I believe, second transfer already, or second or third transfer, and so should there be a cap limit saying you can only transfer this many times, and then after a while you have to commit to the team you're on?
Yes, I think so. Because I think there's a bit of a ridiculous example in Bryson Barnes, or no, excuse me, the Northwestern quarterback. I is that his name? I'm not entirely sure, but he started his career at Cincinnati, and then went to Eastern Michigan, and then went back to Cincinnati, and is now at Northwestern. That's four different schools. I mean, the same school he went to twice, so really it's three schools. But that's four schools in a 6-year career. And, I mean, to me, that's kind of unacceptable. And I don't think it's unacceptable from the standpoint of, oh, it's so bad for the coaches and the teams, and, oh, they can't keep consistent players. To me, it's worse from if you're a player point of view transferring that much. Because, the grass isn't always greener on the other side of the fence. The football isn't always going to be better. You're not always going to have more supportive coaches or better teammates or whatever you're looking for, or, a chance to play. And to me, I think it hurts overall player development because instead of being like the, quarterbacks that have set for a couple of years and players in general that go somewhere, they become highly recruited out of high school, but they have to sit for a couple of years, right? And they get better, like Arch is doing right now at Texas. They're able to be developed in that weight room. They're able to get faster, stronger. They're keep putting in those hours in the film room, becoming a better player, and they're able to do that without a whole lot of risk of injury, and they're just able to get better, right? And instead of jumping around, they get better in this program. They're comfortable in this program. And then when it's their turn, it's their system. They're able to shine. They're the center. They're the focus. They've had a lot of effort put into them. And to me, that's the biggest motivation behind why the transfer portal needs to be limited. And I think a great way to do this is maybe to not put like a direct limit, not to put a number on it, but to start at some point, because it's kind of where we're headed, paying players and getting into almost kind of like a contract. And I don't know what y'all think about this, but, if they have a contract, they can't just leave, right? So to me, if they're being paid, then there's some degree of more allegiance to the school. Because, I mean, if I'm a player, I don't necessarily want anything to change because I can just go chase money, right? In NIL and elsewhere. But to me, for the overall health of the sport, and even for the long-term success of the players in both college and the next level, if they get there, to me, it's much better if they get paid, but they're more locked into a school. And it makes the recruiting process more serious. Because if you're going to spend, several hours, weeks, days recruiting a talent out of high school, and then he sits for a year and leaves, well, you haven't done anything, have you? Right? And to me, that's the biggest deal with all of this. And I think that it should be limited and that they should either get paid or be in a contract or be only allowed to transfer maybe once in and then once as a grad transfer, have to sit a year or something like that, so that it's a way to get out of a really bad situation, not just trying to find a better one.
Yeah, Richard, would you care to elaborate?
Well, I do agree with that because if a player transfers 4 times trying to find a good fit for them and they still don't find it, that's the player's problem. That's them. They need a change. They don't need to change environments. It's them. They need to change and adapt to the environment they go into. And so I feel like they should put a limit like 2 or 3 times because anything over that is just excessive and it's just it's not acceptable. Do you agree
Okay.
with him?
And I agree with both of y'all. I think there needs to be some sort of limit, but I agree with Kieran on the point that there cannot be a hard limit. They can't say you have two, you have only three, because imagine you're Ben Bryant. Ben Bryant was the quarterback at Northwestern, Kieran. It's all right, though. But imagine he was getting zero playtime anywhere else, and he knew his worth. He knew he would be a starter on Northwestern. So he emptied himself to trade, or he emptied himself to transfer. But what I'm saying is, like, I think there should be a contract essentially saying that, look, because NIL is going to be the new biggest thing, and so there should be something like, if you receive NIL money, you need to stay here for 2 years or something like that along those lines. Because I feel like in desperate situations where your coach is going to tell you you're not starting, you will be riding the bench for most likely till your senior year, then you should be able to leave if if you chose to. But there also needs to be some sort of commitment because players can't just keep flipping and flipping and flipping until they find some spot that they feel that they're happy at. And so those were my thoughts on it. Now here's the opposite way. Should there be a number of, or should there be a limit of players that a team can bring over in the transfer portal? So essentially, should Deion Sanders be limited?
Well, I don't think so because if you're trying to build a program that's not very good, that hasn't been very good for a long time, you're trying to build that up from the ground. What's the better way than to bring college students, college football players that have experience to help build and teach and lead the younglings, like the new recruits, and then that's how you create a culture, and then it continues and continues. You know what I'm saying? Teach your thing.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
Kieran, yeah.
I think you're right. I think that, um, I mean, first of all, I don't think you're going to limit Dion. He's probably just going to find a way around it. But I think it's good, and I think it creates different ways to build a roster. And it creates different ways to go about it, and it's not, oh, it's going to take me 2 years before I get more wins than I had or whatever, right? Um, to me, I think that's big, being able to supplement in the transfer portal and just kind of be able to plug and play some guys. And I think it helps teams find an identity quicker than with all freshman players. And I think it just allows you to, like you said, build that culture, build that talent, and be able to really build a team with maybe some kind of prefabricated parts to use an analogy there, instead of having to slowly build it all brick by brick. And I think that's important, and I think it's just going to be part of the landscape of college football. I don't think it really needs to be or should be changed.
And then lastly, I guess this question doesn't relate about transfer, but this question relates about really everything. Is there a way that we can fix or get rid of dynasties to where every team will have an equal opportunity, or will that never be a thing? Like Alabama, Georgia, Texas, what do you call it, Ohio State? They always have the top tier classes, and they always end up being the best team. So essentially, that is a dynasty because they'll always end up being the best, and they'll always bring in the best players. So is there a way that they even that out, or do you just see this game ending up becoming a Power Two conference, which it will be next year, and then essentially a Power One, and then you just get these best teams, and then you have just a big separation. You got the best, and you got the rest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I don't think there's any real way to prevent it unless you want to pass Nick Saban around. Every team gets him for a year. Just mix them around, do all of that. But I don't think that necessarily having a program that's always going to be hyped and recruit well is the same thing as having a program that's consistent on the field and is always going to be in the conversation for a championship. The only program, to me, that in this current kind of era of college football that has always been at least in the conversation for a championship, at least in the preseason and usually into the postseason, is Alabama. So to me, that's kind of the exception to the rule, and why there are always going to be bigger programs. That's dictated by money. That's dictated by available resources, and also to some degree pedigree and history. Now you can build that at another level, but I mean, if we look back a couple of years, Texas wasn't very good. Michigan was losing to Ohio State 8 straight times in a row. All of these teams, it chops and changes. And even though Ohio State, it feels like they're always there, they've only won one championship in this era. So I don't think they're necessarily dominating. They're dominating the Big Ten for sure, but I think that'll change next year with the influx of Oregon and Washington, two very good teams for the Pac-12 that are going to look to be better, and it's going to increase that strength of schedule and make it to where the Big Ten maybe isn't always, oh yeah, it's going to be Michigan or Ohio State on top, right? And I think that the SEC is doing the same. So I don't think dynasties are going to go away, but I don't think there are really that many when you look at it. Now, it seems like there is, and there are a lot of very good teams, but they change from year to year. Like TCU, some people, not the second best team in the country, but they finished second in the country, right? Last year, and now they're pretty much the kind of the bottom feeder of the Big 12. I'm sorry, TCU fans, but it's true. So I think a lot can change, and I think it's different, and I don't think there necessarily are that many dynasties, of course, excluding Nick Saban.
All right. Well, Richard, do you have any questions, or do you want to move on to the flips and lands?
So I have a question. What would you define a dynasty as, Kirtan? Like, what would you define one as?
A dynasty is a team. Well, this is the way I look at it. I say a team that is consistently at the top of the spectrum, a team that is always competing for that national championship year in, year out, a team that is able to recruit very well, very top tier talent, and is able to develop them into solid players, which again leads to national championships. So I would say dynasty is a team that is just consistency. A dynasty is a team like Alabama that, like Kieran said, in the pregame or in the preseason, everyone says Alabama might might compete for the national championship this year, and here we are postseason, number 4 ranked Alabama, and what can you do about it? Because they're here year in and year out.
I agree with both of y'all completely. Right.
Alrighty, and with that, we'll move on to flips and lands. So, Richard, as our Texas analysis, I know both of y'all are, but we'll start with Richard as the guest. What do you think about the Texas flips and most notably Xavier Filsaime from Florida?
Well, Xavier Filsaime, I think he'll be a good fit as a safety for us because we're really lacking safeties at Texas, and so if we can get that on our team, then I think it's a good flip for Sarkisian. So, you hear then.
For this one, honestly, as a Georgia fan, I was pissed. I'm not gonna lie. I was a little bit happy because, again, Georgia fan don't want Florida to get Xavier Filsaime, but it was almost like he came out saying that, hey, I'm gonna rebuild this team from the scratch. We're here. I'm staying here. We are going to be a top tier team. We're going to compete. And then come signing day, homie just says, nah, I'm going to Texas. What are you going to do about it? And he just left. And now you, as a fan of commitment, really, the fact that you came out and said publicly, I am here to rebuild Florida. We're going to the Tim Tebow age. We're going to go win again. And then you just jump ship essentially bandwagoning, joining the number 3 team in the nation. And so,
I mean, but this is all Sarkisian because he is so good at recruiting and getting to know the players. and he is so good at knowing what culture he wants to build with young, respectful men who are leaders on and off the field and who are consistent always. And so I think I'd rather be a part of that program than a part of a 5-7 Florida team right now.
Kane, what are your thoughts on this?
I think he's cutting out.
That's right. When he comes back, we'll get his opinion on it. Richard?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
what feels to me is one. I think he's one.
We're experiencing a
Yeah,
little bit of
so
network issues.
sorry if
Yeah.
I cut out there.
You good.
Yeah, I'm traveling. It's Christmas Eve. Merry Christmas, y'all.
Yes, sir.
Sorry for the audio issues. That's my little present to you.
All right. I didn't gonna be
So-
crazy this week.
I thought that there were kind of. I think he's part of a bigger system, a bigger team for Texas. And they recruited 4 defensive backs in this class, including Xavier Filsaime and Kobe Black being the 2 highest ranked ones. And to me, that's a big deal to shore up that group. And the fact that Texas is able to continue what they've been doing well and also add to make a strength out of their weakness, I think is big in recruiting. And I think it's a huge flip. And I think it's a big deal for Texas. I think we'll see the effects of it next season. And I think that's a big deal. The other big deal, to me, the other kind of biggest commitment is that Colorado was able to sign 5-star offensive tackle Jordan Seaton, which to me is crazy. I think that's really big for Colorado, being able to build offensive line talent from the high school level. And I think that'll help Coach Sanders really shore up some really, frankly, shortcomings this year. Even though it has been, I think, a good season for Colorado. I think he's exceeded expectations. But I think that the addition of Jordan Seaton is going to allow them to become maybe a more physical team and a little bit better in the run game, hopefully, and also in pass protection to allow their skill talent to shine, really. And I think it's a big recruitment for them, and I think it's going to help them long term, certainly.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that opinion. I mean, Deion Sanders, he's been struggling, like we've said last episode. Shedeur Sanders, one of the most pressured quarterbacks. And even Deion Sanders saying these kids lack commitment because he had a lot of kids that entered the transfer portal. He had a lot of kids that said that they were coming to go play for him, and then they ended up leaving. And this is amazing for him, honestly. We know he struggles the most with recruiting offensive line and linemen, and for him to get to get Jordan Seaton, who is an elite 5-star, what do you call it? I believe he is offensive guard.
Tackle.
Yeah, tackle. My bad.
He's a tackle.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a good thing, and this is honestly, we'll cover this later because we're going to rank a couple of team seasons 1 through 10. But for what it's worth, what do you call it? Colorado, it's looking up over there, and I feel like Jordan Seaton's going to make a big impact come Big 12 next year, whenever Colorado enters.
Yep, I think that's a really good analysis. Now, to what I think, I mean, Georgia, let's, give them a little credit, right? They missed out on the playoff, losing to Alabama, but they have been doing incredibly well in recruiting, and they just put the cherry on top, and his name is KJ Bolden. They flipped him to Georgia, and that completes a dream defensive class for them. I mean, they have 5 stars at every level that they've recruited this year, and to me, that's gonna really, I think it'll bring back a more 2022-esque Georgia defense. And if I'm Bama, if I'm Texas, if I'm a lot of those schools looking to compete for the SEC, I am very scared of Georgia, or at least their defense, at least that side of the ball next year. They have had some losses through the portal, but I think that number 1 next to their recruiting class, I think it'll show up next year. I'm not sure to what extent. Obviously you have to get into the offseason and see how these recruits are performing. But to me, I think it'll show up for them. I think it's big for them. And I think it will help, maybe turn their fortunes around and kind of stop the slide that they're in a little bit of right now.
Yeah, and I mean, as a Georgia fan, I heard a little bit of feedback from a couple of my family members, some of my friends saying, Georgia lost Dylan Raiola. What's happening now? What's next for y'all? Are y'all going to lose everyone? Are you going to drop your recruiting class? No, we're not. Obviously, we're not. Kirby Smart, we breed defensive talent. And like you said, a star-studded defensive line. Don't even smirk, man. Watch this. This is going to be a cold year. We're going to go into UT. We're going into Alabama this year. And they're saying, oh, Georgia might have fallen off. No, Carson Beck's returning. Most of our defense, besides Malachi Starks, is coming back. We're running the SEC, baby. Early prediction right now, we come back for that 1 seed.
No.
We're going to clip that up, and it will be kicking around on all of the social media next year, and you will either regret it or seem like the best person to ever live. I don't know. But
The smartest
find out later,
person.
I suppose.
Yeah, burnt orange about to turn red, baby. Austin, Texas
Okay.
turning red.
All right, Kirsten.
Kieran, do you have anything to add about all these flips and lands?
No, I think it's going to continue to develop. I think we did an in-depth recruiting breakdown last time, so please go listen to that episode. But to me, I think I think it'll help change a lot of different team cultures. And I think it's going to be very beneficial for a lot of these teams. And we'll obviously revisit this in February and discuss exactly what we think the impact of some of these players is going to be. But I think that's a good wrap on this segment. And we're going to move to something a little kind of, I guess, a little bit creative. So we're going to do some season reviews. So we're taking basically kind of the composite of the season, taking into account expectations at the start of the season, and basically evaluating not a coach, not a player, but the whole team, the whole program. How have they done from a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the highest, in terms of how have they done this year? Have they been way better than expectations? Have they been way worse than expectations? Are they in the middle, right? And we're going to start off with some of the teams that miss bowls, that are kind of more or less big names, and just kind of talk a little bit about their seasons and give them a rating, and we'll continue to do this. But today we're just going to get started, and the first team is the Florida Gators. And yeah, Kirtan, what do you think about their season, and what's your rating?
I'll kick it off. 4.5. If I can go there, I'd say 5. Some things I got from this is that they had good wins over teams that they were expected to win. I mean, early on in the season, before we got into conference games, they had some really good wins. But again, these were over teams that they weren't even ranked high. They were teams that you would expect the Gators to beat. And then they did have some good wins over South Carolina and the SEC. They beat Tennessee, who was ranked, I believe, 19 at the time. And they did push Florida State to a very close game in the Swamp. I believe it was the Swamp. I don't know.
Yes,
It
it
was,
was in the Swamp.
yeah, it was in the Swamp. And again, though, they just couldn't beat some of the teams. Like, they didn't really put up a fight against a couple of the other teams. And I believe they finished 4th in the SEC East. They lost to Alabama, or they lost to Georgia, I mean. They lost to Kentucky. They lost to Missouri. I mean, it was a very mid-season for them. I feel like they did enough to where the team can still keep going, but I feel like this was a very meh season. You beat who you were expected to be, and you lost to who you were expected to lose to. So, Karen, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've also got to kind of agree with you. I'm going to go straight down the middle. It's a 5 out of 10. This wasn't a particularly make or break season for Billy Napier. Obviously, it would have been nice if he had made a bowl. Now, he, the whole team in general, I mean, they've played okay. They lost to Utah, which is a good team. They lost to Kentucky, but it's an okay team. It's an SEC loss. Um, but they don't really have any notable wins. They kept it close with Missouri. That game was 31-33, if you don't remember. Um, they got trounced by LSU. They lost to Arkansas. I mean, it's not like eye-poppingly bad, but it's not good either, right? So I think it's just kind of that middle of the road, 5 out of 10. This next recruiting class is going to make or break that team and Billy Napier's coaching stint there. But I think it was a decent season. Not the best season, but I think they're certainly hoping for better.
Yeah, Richard,
Yeah, I
what did you
agree.
think about this? Yeah.
So Florida's start to their season, they started 3-1 with a notable win against Tennessee, right? And they looked promising at the very beginning of the season, but then they started getting inconsistent with their games. They even lost to Arkansas by 3, and in the swamp too. And Arkansas, what was the record now? I think it's like 3-6, right? Not a very good team. So I think Florida's. I give it a rating of 4 out of 10 because they have been just very, very, very inconsistent.
Alrighty. Moving on to Mississippi State. I believe they're the Bulldogs. I don't want to mess that up, but yeah, let's go Mississippi State.
Yeah.
Kick it off, Kieran.
Yeah, so I think Mississippi State has had kind of bit of an anonymous season. Obviously you hope for a little better for them. They missed a bowl, also 5-7. Another one of kind of those SEC bottom teams who would do better in another conference, but you're not exactly sure how much better. Their quarterback is going to transfer out. He'd been there for a couple of years, but the new offense wasn't really a fit. They're going to have Jeff Lebby next year, but this year, I mean, you didn't hear about them a whole lot. They weren't a very big deal. And I think that, overall it was a decent season, but I'm going to give them a 4 out of 10. Just based on the reason that they've had, I think they've had more ugly losses than Florida, and they just certainly seem like they seem less in it just overall when compared with Florida, which is kind of a similar team. That I think is fair of a comparison. So I think I'm at a 4 out of 10 there.
Yeah, Richard, your thoughts?
I'd give it a 5 out of 10. And here's why. So Mississippi State finished, I think they're ranked number 20 last season, right? And now they're 5-7, didn't make a bowl game. They got steamrolled by Texas A&M. They got beat by Mississippi, which is they should have gotten beat, and they also got steamrolled by Kentucky too, and by Auburn, and they didn't look that good this year. It was opposite, the opposite direction.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. So I guess we got 5, 4, 3 because I'm giving it a 3 this year. Besides the win over Arizona, this was just poor. I mean, I looked at their season last year. And I saw some promise. I saw some upside. But this year, like Karen said, they weren't in it. They didn't seem like they wanted to win. Or I can't say that. They seemed like they wanted to win, but they didn't seem like they gave it their all, essentially, in my eyes. And, I mean, Will Rogers, their quarterback, he had a decent year. But it was only like 12 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. It was just, again, it was not what you expected. They were below expectations for this year. And that's why I'm giving it a 3 out of 10.
All right. So the next team we've got up is Colorado. And Kirtan, go ahead and kick it off with a breakdown of their season and what you gave them.
All right. Well, Colorado this season, or beginning of the season, Deion Sanders says, "I'm leaving Jackson State. I'm coming here." I know personally. I looked at that screen or the TV and I said, he will not win more than, I don't know, probably 2, 3 games. I said he's played in HBCU. This is FBS football. You coming over here, you're not winning. And I have to take the honest opinion. I was wrong. I was 100% wrong. week one goes to TCU. Mind you, TCU finished were the runners up in the national championship last year, and they beat them. I mean, Shedeur Sanders looked amazing in that game. Travis Hunter looked pretty good in that game. And then Colorado went on a 3-game win streak, and my head started to turn. I was like, wow, they are really good now. And then they got squashed against Oregon, and they got squashed against some of these other teams. But if you take into the account that they went, I believe it was like 1-10, something wild last season, where they didn't win anything really. This was a major, major victory for them. Deion Sanders have brought in great recruits. He's still doing really good in the transfer portal. I believe he's the number one ranked team for transfer portal. And he looks like he's going to give Colorado some much needed upside. And so personally, I gave the season an 8.5, so around an 8 or 9. Which one of y'all want to go next?
I'll go. So I give about an 8, right? Because you can see he's starting to build a program there. Because he got 3 more wins than last season. Also, they had a pretty close game against Arizona. They held their part. But then when you look at like some of the games they shouldn't have lost that bad, like Washington State. Why are you getting steamrolled by 42 points by Washington State? And how are you able to hold close to 21 ranked Oregon State by 7? I mean, that's just inconsistent. That's just coaching right there. That has nothing to do with the team. That's just coaching, and that's all I have to say. Otherwise, it's a good season. Good season. They're going in the right direction.
Okay, so I'm going to be maybe a little controversial. I think this is probably the biggest differential we've had so far. Colorado's getting a 10 for me. I think it's sliding. It's putting them on a sliding scale to give them anything less. I mean, they had a couple of close games against USC and Arizona, as you mentioned. And to me, if they win those two, right, they're bowl eligible. That's incredible. They had 3 more wins than last year. That's huge for me. The fact that he was able to turn over, I think he brought in like 78 players in the transfer portal. Nearly everyone they had left. Almost no one that's playing there. I think they have like 2 returning starters. Almost no one that's playing there now was playing there last year. So to me, I mean, I don't think he could have done any better. He did something that we've never seen before. We've never seen this amount of roster turnover in 1 year. And to be successful, to me, is huge. And to me, he's created this, this kind of we coming, all of his mottos and stuff that have created kind of this hype around Colorado. And to me, that's a victory too, right? He's making recruits want to come. And I mean, if I see Deion Sanders, obviously I'm going to give him a handshake, and I think this is a great coaching job this year. Now, I don't know how high he's going to be able to take the team. But with, Jordan Seaton, I think Colorado's certainly looking up, so I think this has to be a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, and it's getting personal now with the shades on too. It's personal business now.
There you go.
So let's move on to South Carolina. What did you guys think about their season this year? Let's go with you, Kieran.
Yeah. All right. So, to me, South Carolina, I'm going to be frank, kind of disappointed me this year. I expected better. It's a pretty veteran team with, a good quarterback and, I think good coaching still. And I thought they were really building something right there. And they've kind of slid back. They certainly seemed like they were on the uphill from last year to this year. But, I mean, Spencer Rattler hasn't played up to, I think, what everybody thought he would play. And I just think their defense hasn't been great. They don't have a whole lot of signature wins. Again, another kind of 5-7 SEC team. I don't see a whole lot of bright future for them. At least right now. I mean, it depends. We'll see once we get through all of recruiting and all of that. But to me, this has got to be... I think I got to say 3.5 out of 10. Just on the whole season. Because I think they've, dropped the ball in a lot of places. They haven't lived up to expectations. And they've just... They were a story last year. And they were really kind of not a huge story this year. And to me, that was a big change. And they fell off. They weren't really up to expectations.
I agree with you.
So
I
yeah,
actually give it. I actually give it lower than a 3.5. I give it 2. Here's why. Last year, so last year we saw their 2-game win streak when they beat number 6 Tennessee and then number 13 Clemson and held their own against Notre Dame. Right? They showed a lot of promise at the end of the season. I was expecting them to come to this season and do fairly decent, have a 9-win season, but then they didn't live up to it. They just had an awful season. They lost to Florida, they lost to Texas A&M, and they barely beat Jackson State. I mean, it was just a mess, kind of.
All right,
That's
well,
why I give it 2.
whatever y'all gave it, I can't be that harsh. I'm gonna give it a 4. So I'm gonna go one above both y'all, or one above Kieran, 2 above Richard. And the reason for this is that you guys gotta remember they're playing in what do you call it? They're playing in the hardest conference in all of football. And let me just say, like, you start the season off against UNC, North Carolina versus South Carolina, and UNC proved to be a decent team. I mean, have probably a top 5 prospect in Drake May. Um, and you lost to the hard teams though. Like you had to lose to Georgia, you had to lose to Tennessee, you had to lose to Missouri, but then you kept it close. Like you kept it close against Florida. You beat the hell out of Vanderbilt. You beat Kentucky, which was very interesting to me. And then you lose by 9 to Clemson. And I mean, Spencer Rattler, I think this is a better school for Spencer Rattler. I think it's better than Oklahoma. I think it was better than all the schools that he chose otherwise. And of course, it was a down year. You had losses that you probably shouldn't have. You didn't live up to hype. But I can't be as harsh as y'all. I mean, 2 is wild, I'm not gonna lie. That's like saying they did bad. That's like Vanderbilt type stuff. But I'll give it, compared to last year, I'll give it a 4, I think.
All right, let's go to the next one. Cameron Ward's Washington State.
Richard, why
Your
don't you
turn.
kick this one off? No, we'll let you go.
Me. All right, all right, all right. So, I'd say it's hard. This one's hard because they had a 7-5 season, but they couldn't. They got absolutely obliterated by Washington last season. It wasn't even a close game the second it started. But this season they had a lot of close games they should have won. Just turnovers by Cameron Ward that should have been there, like getting sacked like 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage, trying to make a play that's not there instead of just throwing it away. And as you can see, they're a very capable team because they held their ground against Washington and only lost by 3 points. It's a field goal. I mean, that's impressive because Washington's number 2 now. So I'd say I give the season a 7.
Yeah, well, Washington State last year had were 8 win. They had their 8 win season last year. Um, this year, like you said, 7-5, I believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, this year is 5-7. Last year was 7-5.
No, well, then I can't really give it that high. Again, you had really close games against Washington, which is very shocking, and you had a really close game against Stanford. But Stanford is a team that I believe you're supposed to win, and this might be a hard take,
Yeah.
but I think you're supposed to beat Stanford. You performed perfectly against Washington. I think you did everything you could. But again, you had an 8 win season last year, so we're taking it based off of what they did last year, and now this year, I'm gonna give it, I think, a 6. I think you played well, but again, you didn't live up to expectations. I think you undershot it a little bit. Kieran?
So I'm gonna highlight a couple of losses here that are big to me. Actually, 3. So, well, I guess 4 actually. These are kind of the 4 losses, games that they shouldn't have lost. Stanford is one of them. They lost to Cal, but in a close game. They lost to UCLA in a relatively close game. That was by 8. So, and then they lost to Arizona State by 9. So that's a couple. I mean, they're reasonably close games. But when you're beating Colorado 56-14, and and then on the other end and beating Oregon State 38-35, and you've got good wins on there, at least decent wins. But then you've got all these kind of losses that you shouldn't be dropping, right? Because there's a situation in which Washington State even beats 2 of those teams and is now 7-5, or if they beat all 4, they're 9-3, right? And that's, to me, that was kind of the difference between where I think they should have been in the season, and where they were. So I think it's a 5. You have a decent win, but for the talent you have, I think you should be getting more. So, I think, 5 right around there, right about, kind of middle of the road is where they were. And, when you look at the ugly losses and all of that, I don't think that's that harsh of a grade for them. But I think that Washington State, after being, now they're kind of left alone in the Pac-12 with Oregon State, kind of has to reevaluate and figure out exactly what they want to do moving forward. So,
Yeah. I was just about to say,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure Oregon State declared that they were leaving. And I think Oregon State and Washington State, let me check this. Washington State going to which?
Oh, is this one going to be hot off the Google?
Yeah, the West Coast Conference. So, hot off the Google search. Oregon State and Oregon State have declared that they're leaving for the West Coast Conference. So, any thoughts on
Okay,
that?
well, whoop-de-doo. Really, really, really shocking there. Yeah, they kind of got left out there. Speaking of getting left out and then trying to leave, Florida State. So they just recently, a couple of days ago, have announced that I believe it was the Board of Regents or the Board of Directors, voted unanimously to sue the ACC over basically contract violations in essentially the media rights contract that they're engaged with, and also the contract that says they have to stay in the conference. So basically, they're suing to get out of the ACC. Certainly, it makes sense because you have to think if they did what they did in the SEC or the Big Ten, I think they get in to the playoffs. So I think it makes sense for them to get out of the ACC. Obviously, not a lawyer. I don't know how this is all going to shake out, but it could be very big in that key kind of last realignment piece. And I just want to get a couple of thoughts. My first idea is, where do you think they'll go? What's a better fit for them if they are able to get out? And secondly, if they aren't able to get out, where does that leave this Florida State program? So let's go ahead and, I guess, Richard, give me some thoughts first.
What do you say? Hello?
Give us some thoughts on Florida State, or because Florida State is essentially trying to leave the ACC, Richard. So just give me and Karen some thoughts on where you think they're going to land and if they don't leave, right?
Okay, so I feel like there's either two conferences they go to. SEC, the rival is Florida, obviously, or the Big 12. Both of those conferences are good fits for them. If you're talking about competition, their competition level that they can match up with. So the conference I'd say they go to probably is the SEC. If I was try to prove a point. What about you, Kirtan?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It is either the Big 12 or SEC in my eyes. I don't think they'll go to the SEC because I don't think they can replicate what happened this season if they were in the SEC. This might be a hot take, but if they were in the SEC, I don't think they're even top 10, to be honest. I think they throw in the 11 or 12 spot.
Damn,
And
that's
it's going to be a
rough.
hard take. It's going to be a hot take. But and we'll see. Like, if I'm right, we'll see what happens against Georgia in this Orange Bowl because I don't think they really have the firepower enough to compete against these tough teams. Of course, they beat LSU. Don't get me wrong. I still believe that they're a great team. They beat LSU. They beat both SEC teams that they faced this year. But again, they beat them early on. It's like the same conversation you can have for Alabama and Texas. Was Alabama fully developed when y'all played them? Was LSU really fully developed when they played Florida State? And so I think as the team matures, and if all the series happen again, if Jordan Travis hypothetically goes down in the SEC, I don't think the team does that well. I don't even think they make top 10. I think they fall around 11, like 11 through 13.
Okay, I agree with you. That's a good point.
So I do believe, yeah. So to cap that off, I would think they go to Big 12. I think they would dominate in the Big 12 now. I think Big 12 is enough, as we saw with Texas. It's enough to get you into the playoffs. I think
Hmm.
that'd be the best fit for them. We got the Military Bowl presented by GoBowling.com, which features Virginia Tech playing Tulane. Now to start this, Virginia Tech is favored in this matchup, which I find very interesting, but it does make sense. Tulane's head coach is heading over to Houston, and they're starting wide receiver, safety, tight end, both edges, and backup QB are leaving Tulane. However, Tulane has played tougher opponents. Again, this might be a hot take, but I think Tulane wants this win more. Tulane wants to prove something, and I feel like they've played better opponents. Like I said, against like they played Ole Miss. They played higher caliber teams than Virginia Tech, and for that reason, I believe the score will be actually in favor of Tulane being 24-21.
Well, I agree with you on that because Tulane just lost their conference, right? By what was it, 12 points, and I think they're coming to this game ready to prove something and show that was just a fluke, and they can be better teams than SMU. And so I'm gonna have Tulane being Virginia Tech. I give it 28, 27, 24.
Kieran?
Yeah, all right. So I think that this is going to be another very ugly matchup. And I think it's easily as we're saying, oh, I think Tulane's going to pull it off. I think there's also a chance that Virginia Tech just runs up the table on them, right? With all of the transfers, with all of the losses that Kirtan mentioned. So I think that this could be a very ugly matchup. But if I had to pick, I'm going to go Virginia Tech by 3 just because of all of Tulane's losses. But I think Virginia Tech's going to win by 3, 17-14.
Okay.
Makes sense. Alrighty, moving on, we got Duke's Mayo Bowl. This is a matchup between UNC and West Virginia, I believe. And in this matchup, UNC are, I believe UNC are minus 6.5 for this game, which is surprising to me. So, I mean, not minus 6.5, plus 6.5. So, West Virginia's favorite in this matchup. Some key highlights here is that Drake May, quarterback of UNC, top prospect in the upcoming NFL draft, will be opting out of this matchup, along with Cedric Gray, their starting linebacker. And so this week, I believe his name is Connor Harrell will be the starter, and so I believe this will be his first couple of snaps he's ever taking. And West Virginia is not really losing anyone big. I believe their center Zach Frazier is entering the transfer portal, and so I have West Virginia winning this game 28-14. What are
Yeah,
y'all's
I
thoughts?
think yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you. I'm gonna have to agree with you in Vegas there. I hate to pick against the Fighting Mac Browns, but to me, I don't think they can get it done. Cedric Gray has been huge for them on defense this year. It's been a disappointing season. They looked good until they started losing kind of down the stretch to Clemson and others. I think that I just think the losses through the portal into the draft are too big. I don't think they're going to be able to overcome them. So to me, yeah, I think I'm going to have to say 21-14, 21-14 West Virginia is my pick.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with 28-14 West Virginia.
Alrighty. Next we got DirecTV Holiday Bowl. This is gonna be a fun one. This will be Louisville versus USC. And so
Oh,
for this one, I got Louisville saying that they only will be missing their running back Jawar Jordan and wide receiver Jamari Thrash, two big components of the game, as long with I believe Cameron Kelly decided he was going to play in this game. I don't think he'll opt out. He said he'll come back. And USC, I feel like USC is always a disappointment in ball games. I don't know why, but I mean, you lost to Tulane last year, and that I guess it was possible, but no one expected a 60 to lose. Or I think they were lower after they lost to Utes, but of course you're not going to be starting Caleb Williams. I don't know about y'all, but I believe he's the for sure first overall pick of the draft. You'll not have running back Marshawn Lloyd. He'll be sitting out this game too. And Jerry Rice's son, Brendan Rice, will not be playing, as they are all declaring. And so for this game, I didn't really get down a prediction. I said this game would be Louisville by around 7. Shakir, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, USC has been a bit of a conundrum this year, but yeah, without Caleb Williams, and without some of their skill talent, they really are nothing. Um, I, the question is I don't even know if they're gonna field the defense. I'm not entirely sure um, if they're gonna field the defense or not. But they haven't a lot of times, and I think that's gonna be a huge key for them going forward. But yeah, I have to pick against them. Um, I think they're going to lose by more. I think they're going to lose by 14 to Louisville because I think Louisville has been really disappointed. I think they had maybe, not necessarily higher expectations, but I think they had higher goals, especially towards the end of the season. Um, so I think it's, I think they're going to spoil USC's day and just make that record a little worse and make Lincoln Riley's little seat there a little bit hotter. But I think they're going to win by 14.
Yeah.
So
All right, Richard.
I'm gonna go actually the opposite. I'm gonna have USC is gonna blow out Louisville, and here's why.
Blowout.
Even with
That's
yeah,
crazy.
even without Caleb Williams, you have many like high what do you call it?
Many.
Yeah, give me a second. Okay, no. So you have people on the offense who can score in like an instant. USC's offense is like the real deal. They can get and score, but it's just USC's defense that's it's not that good. Same with Louisville, except Louisville's offense is not that good. As you saw that they put up, was it 10 points against Florida State, and then their defense couldn't stop a Florida State third string. And so I think that they're not going to be able to stop USC. I mean, what are they going to do? Because USC's offense is much better than Florida State. And so I'm going to have USC up 48-24.
Wow, the spiciness on that take. I think my eyes are watering. Jeez. Especially from a Texas fan. The Texas fan is picking USC to blow out. Oh, gosh.
I hate it. I mean,
Wild. Wow.
It's chaos. It is really wild out there. Keep your hats on, folks. So, Kirtan, let's go ahead and line up the next bowl to.
Yeah, I got you. This one's gonna be the Tax Act Texas Bowl featuring the Aggies taking on Oklahoma State, your runner-ups in the Big 12 championship game. Uh, Personally, I say that, well, first off, Vegas has the game being a 1.5 point favorite for the Aggies, which I don't believe will happen, actually. I'm taking, what do you call it? I'm taking the Cowboys in this game because, again, the biggest coaching change that's happened this year is the rich man Jimbo Fisher getting paid out that beautiful $70 million, that most lucrative
20,000 a
deal.
day. Oh my goodness, that's
Yeah,
crazy.
but he's lost so much talent. Like, it's undeniable. He's lost 7 starters to the transfer portal, and like we covered last episode, Kieran, Walter Nolan capping off being one of the best players that left him. Um, and then backup QB, not even their starter QB, their backup's also saying he's going to leave this year. So in this game, you're going to be starting a third string Jalen Henderson, who I believe transferred in from another school, hasn't seen any minutes. Um, Also opting out is Aeneas Smith and Edgerrin Cooper, and starting D tackle McKinley Jackson. Um, that is just a big loss for A&M. I'm just reading off these couple of names that I found. But Oklahoma State, they're retaining a lot of players, including their star running back Ollie Gordon, who I believe will be the key in this game. I think as Texas A&M is losing a lot of talent, I believe Ollie Gordon will have a much awaited game, a game that he should have had in the conference championship. And I have this game ending up 35-24 Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Oklahoma State beating Texas A&M by a good margin. Like I'd say probably 17 points. Here's why. Texas A&M's defense is so inconsistent. They can't even hold. They can hold Alabama to 26 points, and they can't hold Miami to 48 points. It's like, but like you're talking about, they lost their head coach Jimbo, and then they just let they're losing a lot of people to the you know. So I'm gonna have Oklahoma State up by 17, and final
That
score is gonna
was
be 14 to 31, 31-14.
All right, so yeah, I'm gonna have to go with you guys. I think Oklahoma State's gonna blow them out. I think it's gonna be something. I think Ollie Gordon's gonna have a big day. I think it's gonna be somewhere like. I mean, I even go as far as to say 40-17. I mean, the A&M losses are huge. I think if A&M finds a way to win it, that would be incredible. That'd be huge. But I don't think they can overcome the Cowboys and Mike Gundy, voted Big 12 Coach of the Year. Um, and I think the Cowboys, they're more experienced. I think they're more grounded as a group, and I think that they're just going to be able to. That's going to be the difference, and I think Ollie Gordon is also going to be a big part of that difference to get them past A&M.
Alrighty, well, let's keep it moving. Moving on, we got Wasabi Fenway Bowl. This game is going to feature SMU playing Boston College. I'll let one of y'all start this time. Kieran, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, so uh, get you the horse gallop ready. I think SMU is going to roll. I think SMU they had a good season. Um, I think they're much improved over last year. They're recruiting well. I mean, I think everything's on the up for SMU. Um, I just think SMU is going to be able to win it. They've got a pretty good, high-powered offense that'll be able to power pass Boston College. There's not really a whole lot to dig in here. I think it's an okay matchup, but I think SMU is going to win. I think SMU is going to win somewhere in the vicinity of 35-28, let's say.
I have SMU winning 35-14 because Boston College just like loves to get steamrolled. The game beat by 30, by 40, by 20 all the time, and then left and right. So I mean, who's to say it's not going to be another blowout? So SMU 35-14.
Yeah, and just to keep the segment moving, SMU major favorites in this game. I bet they're like 10.5 favorites. Um, Neither player has anybody heading to the draft of this year. QB Emmett Moorhead, who lost starting job, will leave for Boston College. Um, just some big things to cover. Their starting safety for Boston College, Cole Watson, will not hasn't played since week 11. That's a big loss, including their starting cornerback Elijah Jones, who also had a season-ending injury. Hopefully, he gets well. My prediction is Richard said a blowout. I say within 6. I don't know which way this swings. I honestly couldn't tell. I'm not gonna lie. Boston College is one of my favorite teams just to watch. I don't know why. I've always favored Boston College. But I have the game being within 6. I don't know which way it's going to lean, but that's my prediction. Um, Moving on, we got the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. What a name. What a name, can I say? We're going to
Oh, it's
feature
great.
Rutgers versus Miami, yeah. Um, Richard, start us off.
I'm gonna have Miami. It's gonna be a close game. I'm gonna have Miami winning. I'm gonna say since Miami loves scoring a lot, so I'm gonna say, yeah, I'd say it'd be a high scoring game, be 42-35. I'd say final score is.
Uh, yeah, I'll go next. I'm apparently what I got is I don't think it'll be that high scoring. I think honestly I thought this was gonna be one of the lowest scoring games. Um, it's a razor close margin. According to Vegas, it's gonna be 1.5 favor of the let me check. Yeah, it's 1.5 favored to University of Miami, but let's not forget they're losing Van Dyke, who is their starting quarterback this year for Miami, and so for that reason and that reason mainly, I have it being 17-14 Rutgers.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's a big question. I don't know, who shows up at QB for Miami. Can Rutgers make that statement? Um, I think Miami's on the up, but it's still like a key win for them to increase momentum. I think it's important for them. Um, I'm gonna pick Miami 17-14 just because they're a physical team and they're going to be able to kind of impose their will on Rutgers even if they don't have it in the air game and with the flash. But I think they'll just be able to get it done in a gritty 17-14 win.
Alrighty.
Next, we've got the Pop Tarts Bowl, which is going to feature NC State matching up against Kansas State. A couple of highlights. Kansas State is a very tough and gritty team that's powered through to get wins this year. And played Texas really close as well. And NC State has the Butkus Award winner and linebacker, but he's opting out. So he will not be there for them to shore up that defense. Let's go and go to Kirtan. What do you think?
Um, First off, my second favorite chant, NC State, NC State. Um, 2.5 point favorite to the Wildcats. Neither QB will start this game, and MJ Morris is transferring, and Will Howard for the Wildcats is also transferring. These are both their quarterbacks. They both won't be playing. Um, what else do I have really? I think Kansas State is a very well-rounded team. I think they gave Malik Murphy a great test, and they tested all of Texas in UT. Let's not forget. I don't know how y'all are gonna deal with Washington. Just saying. Um, Kobe Savage for the Wildcats will be transferring, and offensive coordinator. This is important. Colin Clean is leaving and accepted the job at Texas A&M. So I don't believe he'll be helping out this game. And like you said, the Dick Butkus Award winner went to what was it, NC State, right? To that guy?
Yep, Patrick Bailey.
Yeah, yeah. And so he won't be in. And so for that reason alone, I have a 21-24 Miami.
Miami?
Huh, Miami.
Oh, yeah, my bad, my bad. I'm looking at the wrong game, looking at the wrong game, looking at the wrong game. Kansas State, my bad. Look at the wrong game.
Okay, I'm gonna have Kansas State 17-14. I feel it to be a low scoring game because Kansas State just runs you and runs you and runs you down to the point to where they can just run it, get big gains and everything. So, what's Kieran saying?
Oh, nothing. Yeah. So, I tend to agree with you. I think Kansas State's the more physical team. I think it's going to be, I honestly think it's probably going to be a 10-7 Kansas State victory just from being able to grind it out. Just going to predict that real low scoring, real physical. But I think Kansas State's going to be able to kind of power through, especially with that good offensive line. And Kirtan, I think the only thing they tested was my heart. I was at that game. It was very dramatic.
Bro's blood
Give me
pressure
a heart
went
attack.
crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so the next bowl we've got up is the Valero Alamo Bowl with Arizona matching up against Oklahoma. And, Arizona's really kind of almost on top of the world. They're a very feel-good team. They've played great down the stretch. They've been one of the best stories in college football. And I think Oklahoma had a lot of potential this year, but they fell short against several teams. Dylan Edwards has been the difference for Oklahoma in the big moments, but he won't be this time because he's not playing. So I think Arizona is going to be able to – I think they're going to beat them. I think it's going to be – relatively high scoring, at least on Arizona's part. So I think it'll be 35-24 Arizona or thereabouts. I just think they're going to win. I think they're the better team, and I think they're much less hurt by opt-outs, kind of similar to Missouri, at least in the fact that they don't have nearly as many people opting out.
I agree with you, Kieran. I think it's just going to be a total shootout, just up for grabs. I'm going to say it's a really high-scoring game. I'm going to say Oklahoma gets blown out, obviously, so 56-28.
Well, sorry, Hookem. I'm taking Oklahoma to win this one, 30-21. Yeah, yeah. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? Arizona's favored in this game by 3. Only main player not playing for them is Jordan Morgan for Arizona, and Dylan Gabriel, like we all know, is heading over to Oregon. Big difference maker. Tyler Guyton and Andrew Rhyme also chose not to play. They're opting out. Good news though is their star linebacker Danny Stutzman and starting safety Billy Bowman announced that they will return for the next season and hence will play in this game. I think this is a game where Oklahoma is going to prove something because I feel like this has been a letdown of a year. Not going to lie, especially as you're heading to the SEC. As you're heading to the SEC, besides that one win for Texas, I don't think it wasn't that great for them. Still made a bowl game, but I believe Oklahoma's going to go in there. Sooners going to get the win, 30-21. And I guess we'll move on to the Tax Slayer Bowl, or Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. Another awesome name. Who wants more than just to cut your taxes down? Slay 'em. We got Clemson versus Kentucky in this game. Wildcats versus the Tigers. Tigers are 5.5-point favorites heading into this matchup. Clemson's losing a lot of star talent. Me and Kieran, we discussed this last episode. They're losing Bo Collins to Notre Dame. They're losing Andrew Makuba to the transfer portal. But I believe besides that, I believe Clemson will have a good game. I'm a very big Cade Klubnik fan. I believe he'll progress well. I think he's going to grow. I think Dabo Swinney is going to make a comeback next year. But besides that, I think Kentucky, they're not starting their edge, Keaton Wade, to the transfer portal. And both Ray Davis and Andrew Phillips for Kentucky will not play. I have this game being razor close, 35-38 Clemson.
Ooh. So what I'm going to say is I'm going to have Cade Klubnik having a big game, a very big game, because Kentucky's passing offense is ranked number 127, so it's not very good. And so I think that Clemson can pull away from this game. I'm going to say it'll be 28-14. It's the final score. Clemson,
Yeah, so
28-14 Clemson.
Yeah, I think it's key for Dabo to win this game, end on and up, get some of that momentum. I think, Clemson, while they've lost a lot of talent, I think they're still the more talented team. Kentucky's had a good year, but especially without Ray Davis, who has led them at times and been the difference with his really quite excellent. He's had a really good season running the football with him, but with him not playing, I think Clemson's going to take it 21-14. I don't necessarily agree with Cade Klubnik having a big day, but I think that I think he'll play well. He'll play well enough to get the win. I think Clemson will be able to end up on an up. So the next bowl we've got is the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl, featuring Oregon State squaring off against Notre Dame. So I think these teams were both had huge potential, and then had various shortcomings, close losses, disappointments throughout the year. Notre Dame, Ohio State stands out as a loss that was close and they had a chance in. And, Oregon State has lost their QB, DJ Uiagalelei, to the portal. And, this is, I hope, unless he comes back again, the last time we'll see Sam Hartman. So I think it's a question of if so-called football Jesus can preach one more time. And so, I think it's going to be, I think it'll be close. I think Notre Dame has the edge. They've had, a good team this year, disappointing season for them, but having their starting quarterback, Sam Hartman, who's led them through a lot, is going to be big. I think they're going to play, to some degree for him in his, hopefully his last game. And I think that'll be big, and I think that Notre Dame is going to get it done 17-21. over Oregon State.
This game can go both ways. It can either be a blowout or it can be a close game. And when it's going to be a blowout is when Notre Dame's going to just shut down Oregon State's offense, high-scoring offense. That's going to be a blowout. But if Notre Dame lets Oregon State's offense run free, that's going to be a close game. And so I'm going to say that I think Notre Dame's going to have a good defensive day. So I have Notre Dame winning 28-21.
Makes sense. For this bowl game, we know coming into the game it's a 6.5 point favorite for Notre Dame. Like you said, DJ, again, won't pronounce the last name, don't want to butcher it. And DJ, and Aiden Chili are both entering the transfer portal. So you're gonna expect to see their third string start this game. Along with them, linebacker Achille Arnold and Easton Mascarenas Arnold are both transferring. I don't believe Anthony Gold or starting right tackle Talise Fuaga will be playing because I believe they're NFL prospects. And offensive coordinator Gerald Parker will be taking the head coaching job at Troy. So there's a lot of movements. If Sam Hartman did say he's going to come back this game, I have. If Sam Hartman's coming back this game, I have Irish winning. I'm winning 42-35, and yeah. Kieran, what was that face you were making? Just wondering.
Nothing. Yeah, so they are going to be without Audric Estime, which is important to note. You will not see him as he's getting ready for the draft. But other than that, so moving on to the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Memphis versus Ohio State. Iowa State. So I think the young Iowa State team gets it done. I think they're going to win by 14. I think there's not much to it. Kirtan?
Yeah, like you said, main things that I got were Iowa State will have starting Malik Verdon. He'll miss the game. But like you said, I think Iowa State handles business in this game. I have this game being 21-31. Iowa State.
I have Iowa State blowing out Memphis because Memphis clearly can't hold the run because their defense is allowing 180 rushing yards per game. And Iowa State has one of the best running backs in Big 12. So I'm going to have Iowa State having an excellent rushing game. And so Iowa State's going to win. I'm going to go again 28-21. Or that's not 28-14, 28-14.
Next we have the TransPerfect Music City Bowl. This is going to feature Auburn versus Maryland. Auburn are favored 7 points coming into this game. Some key notes that I found were DJ James and Jalen Simpson are expected to opt out of this game. And for Maryland, they're not going to have his brother, Talia Tagovailoa. He'll be opting out the game with Tarib. And so for this game, I think Las Vegas has this game dead on. I said the game's going to be 38-31 Auburn. Karen, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think this is a question of if Auburn can get some momentum or not. Do we see the same team that played against Alabama, or do we see the team that played and lost to New Mexico State in blowout fashion? I think Auburn's going to get it done. I think they're going to get it done 21-14, and yeah, that's kind of what I think. Richard?
Yeah. Like you said, they got blown out by New Mexico State. Won against Alabama. Oh, well, not one. Lost by 3 against Alabama, so can go either way. I'm going to go 21-14 like you.
Alrighty, and next we got Arizona Bowl. This one's going to feature Toledo, Wyoming. Richard, kick us off.
Toledo, Wyoming. So, I don't even know. I'm going to kick off with you first, Kirtan, because I don't know too much about these teams, so.
It's all right. Some stuff that I found notable when I was looking into this game was DeQuan Finn, the starting quarterback, is expected not to play, so expect Tucker Gleason to start if Finn does not play, like I said. Also, their stud starting left guard, Vinny Scurry, he's set to transfer. For Wyoming, their head coach, Greg Bowl, announced that he's going to retire after this game, so I feel like this is going to be like emptying Wyoming to win a little bit more. Also, offense coordinator for Wyoming, Tim Polasek. He will be the new head coach of North Dakota State, so he's gonna head over there. Um, and so for this game, I said it's gonna be really tight. Um, I'm just gonna say 24-21. I got Wyoming.
Yeah, I think Wyoming gets it done. They've looked good this year, especially in games against better opponents. Um, so yeah, I think Wyoming gets it done. I think it's going to be more like 35-28 Wyoming. But yeah, I think it'll be a good matchup, and at least will be a good game if they're not two very headline teams.
Yeah, I'm gonna have Wyoming winning 28-21.
Alrighty. Now going to your New Year's Six games, I believe. But pretty sure
Missouri
it's
and
called.
Ohio State.
Yeah, Mizzou versus the Buckeyes. Kieran, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so Missouri has been they've had an incredible season, and they've been a really good feel good story in the SEC. Eli Drinkwitz has done an excellent job there, finding talent like former walk on Cody Schrader, who is now leading the SEC in rushing. I think he's the best back in the SEC by a good margin. He's just able to run through tackles and run through defenses. Has great speed. He can cut, he can catch, he can really kind of do it all. He's been one of my favorite players to watch this year, and I think he's going to be a big difference. If he has a big game, I think that'll propel Missouri past Ohio State. The other thing I think is key is I think Missouri is all in. They don't have many transfers that are leaving. They don't have a whole lot of people opting out. Because this is big for them, right? Being ranked ninth, getting a chance to go out and beat number 7 Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. It's a big bowl for them in a New Year's Six. And I think Ohio State isn't in as much. They've obviously lost Kyle McCord, their starting quarterback. And, Marvin Harrison is, as far as I know, up in the air. So I think I'm going to take Missouri. I think Missouri's going to get it done 35-14. And I think Cody Schrader is going to go over 100 yards in the ground and over 200 yards altogether.
Yeah,
I
and
agree with
that's
you. This
essentially what I have. Yeah. Where'd
you
you
go,
go?
you go, you go. No, you go.
All right. Yeah, this game's gonna be really close. Like you said, Eli Drinkwitz, their head coach for Missouri, said everyone's participating, I believe, except for one of the players. I think this is a very big game. This is SEC versus Big Ten. This is gonna be a fun one. Of course, Ohio State lost Kyle McCord to Syracuse. So you're gonna expect Devin Brown to play. He has 72 snaps played before, so I think he'll be ready. Like you said, Cody Schrader, he's the difference maker on this game. He's leading the SEC. I have to agree with the fact that he is the best running back so far this season I've seen. He'll be a difference maker. Um, I think this is a big game for Missouri. I think they want to win, and they want to be able to say that they beat Ohio State. Um, I don't believe Marvin Harrison will decide to play. I think he's not going to be in. And so for this game, I have it being 21-35 Mizzou.
Yeah, I agree with y'all. Missouri has had a turnaround season, just a complete turnaround. And they're on a roll right now. They've won 3 straight games. And so I think Missouri has the momentum in this game since Ohio State lost to Michigan. I'm going to have Missouri winning 35-14.
All right, that'll be a great game. Be sure to tune in and catch that one. And another great game will be the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, featuring 11th ranked Ole Miss taking on 10th ranked Penn State. I think Lane Kiffin is one of the better coaches in college football right now. If he can keep this going, I think he's got a chance to do well at Ole Miss. Penn State has one of the best defensive groups in the country. Now, they won't have Chop Robinson in this bowl game as he's preparing for the draft. And it's a question of if they're limited or their defense with limited personnel can stop the improving Ole Miss offense. Ole Miss is going to get a lot back next year. So you would assume Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins will both play. And the other question is if the offensive struggles for Penn State continue. I think Ole Miss is going to win it. I think it's going to be close. I have Ole Miss winning it 24-21. in a close, good game. Richard, what do you think?
This is going to be a good game. We have a really good offense versus a really good Penn State defense. And so, man, this is going to be a really good game. So I'm going to have a low-scoring game. I'm going to have it 21-14. 21-14 Penn State.
Yeah. And I'm going to go with, I'm shocked you said Penn State. I'm going with Ole Miss on this one. I think the big difference maker that Karen mentioned are returning for this game. I think he is a win at all cost guy. I've seen him put his head down and tuck the ball and go. I believe that Penn State's defense is very stifling, but I think Ole Miss can improve. I think Ole Miss is going to come out there and get the win. I have this game just being by 8. I don't know which. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the score it's going to be, but I have SEC Ole Miss winning by 8. And then moving on to our last game, right? The last game we're going to cover is Georgia versus FSU. So me and Kieran covered this a little bit last week. The Dogs are favored 14.5. Some key takeaways just from what I put last week. Last week I said that if Florida State wins, this shows that the committee was wrong. This shows that they were deserving of being into that college football final and the college football playoffs. However, if they lose, this will prove the committee right. They'll show that they cannot contest with SEC teams and that Alabama should have been put above them. Brock Bowers will opt out of this game. Malachi Starks will opt out of this game. But I still believe Georgia will win by 20. Will win by 7 points. Final score being 21-14. Kieran.
All right, yeah. So I think this is a fascinating breakdown. I think that it's going to be, it's a bit of a disappointment bowl, if I'm being honest. But I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a good game. Big opt-outs for Georgia, obviously. Florida State struggling on their, backup quarterbacks with Rodemaker. It depends on how many weapons play for Florida State, I think. But I still think I've got to take Georgia just from the sheer amount of talent and line of scrimmage talent they have. And, Florida State hasn't been beat yet, but I think Georgia's going to do it. We've seen how they've struggled against teams like Louisville and Florida. At least for most of the game. So I think Georgia gets it done 35-14.
I agree. Because Florida State, if you can't stop a bad Louisville offense, you're not going to be able to stop Georgia. Let's be realistic. That's just not going to happen. So I'm going to have Georgia 42-14.
Alrighty, and this concludes episode 2 of Beyond the Snap podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Merry Christmas to all, and have a good day.
Yeah, great to have you, Richard. Merry Christmas, y'all.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple, and follow us on YouTube. Thanks, and see you next time.
Thank you for having me, Kieran and Kirtan. All right, see y'all.
Okay, wait. Okay, now we need a post for, for a thumbnail photo, because I need a thumbnail for y'all, because it was so bad last time. Here's my thumbnail.
That's your thumbnail? I don't have anything for a thumbnail. Come on, man. Let me on the... There you go.